Ah, Joker. What is there to say about this iconic prankster that hasn't already been said? The arch nemesis to one of the greatest comic book characters of all time. He has been portrayed in dozens of ways, in every era, in every medium. Since his debut in Batman #1 all the way back in 1940, the villain has cemented himself into American pop culture. The Joker made the perfect antithesis to Bruce Wayne. Like Batman, he has no special powers or abilities, but he counteracts the character of Batman perfectly through his psychology. While Batman has a clear-cut moral code and a set of core beliefs about the world,
I'm vengeance.
The Joker is the opposite. He is chaotic and unpredictable. He doesn't care for anyone or anything. His only purpose is to tear down the world around him and have a few laughs about it. He revels in the hypocrisy of a system trying to hold him down. The Joker is a comic book villain with layers to him that go far deeper than what they may appear on the surface. Every iteration of him has been unique in their own way, from comics, cartoons, film, and video games.
But you of all people should know, there's plenty wrong with me.
The Joker has always been a main staple to the Caped Crusaders' struggle for justice. In 2008, a little film called The Dark Knight dropped, the second Batman film from director Christopher Nolan. Nolan wanted Joker to be the main antagonist for the sequel and decided on Australian actor Heath Ledger to portray the criminal clown. And what Heath did changed everything about how we view the character.
I believe whatever doesn't kill you simply makes you stranger.
This performance was not only one of the best portrayals of a comic book movie character ever, but one of the greatest performances ever put onto film, earning him an Academy Award after his tragic passing. This set the bar higher than anyone thought the character could be taken. Some later tried, and horribly failed. This left many at DC and Warner Brothers unsure of what to do with the character. I mean, how could they top this? Then the announcement dropped that led many fans to be intrigued as well as skeptical. Warner Brothers would begin production on a standalone Joker origin film starring Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker. The film would be written and directed by Todd Phillips. Wait, that Todd Phillips? The director of the Hangover trilogy? It was a shocking announcement. I mean, everyone agreed that Phillips was great in his respective genre of comedy, but how would he be able to translate those skills into the world of a comic book movie? And not just any comic book movie, a dark and gritty character study about the origins of one of comic books' most iconic characters. Many eyebrows were raised, and rightfully so. Later on, some trailers dropped, and I remember being very intrigued, especially by the tone of the film. This wasn't some campy portrayal of the villain. This film was set in real, dark, and depressing Gotham. The production value and cinematography looked amazing, and the first look at Phoenix's portrayal as the Joker left me anxious to see the final film. Joaquin Phoenix is undeniably one of the greatest actors of his generation, and definitely had the talent to fill the Joker's shoes. But the elephant in the room still lingered. As great as Phoenix could be, the question still stood on whether anyone could come close to topping Ledger's portrayal, and even if such an attempt was foolish. Then, finally, Joker was released in theaters on October 4th, 2019, and what followed shocked the world. Now, you have to remember that 2019 was during the peak of the comic book movie era. The films that were once only novelties and never really taken seriously dominated the box office. It seemed like every other big budget movie being made at this time was a comic book movie, and they were making a boatload of money.
Assemble.
Every studio that had any rights to comic book IP was looking for some ways to capitalize on this momentum. Some studios, like Disney with Marvel, were doing a great job of this, while other studios like Warner Brothers with DC were crapping the bed.
Kal-El, no!
DC was being beaten by Marvel in almost every way. It was clear that the direction of trying to imitate Marvel Studios' vision was clearly not working. So they decided to take a risk and go for something different. They decided that they'd do something that no one had done yet. a villain's origin story. Not just that, but this film would stand on its own and not be connected to any larger cinematic universe. In fact, fuck it, Batman's not even going to be in this movie. Well, young Bruce Wayne, just for a couple scenes, but that's it. It was clearly a high-risk, high-reward proposition, but it was one DC was willing to take.
Do I need to call the police?
Now, let me describe to you my experience seeing Joker in theaters. Me and my dad went to go see the movie together. My dad wasn't really into comic book movies, and I only watched a few of them, but didn't really follow the whole extended cinematic universe timeline thing. Needless to say, we both kept an open mind and were intrigued by Joker. We sat down to watch and were absolutely mesmerized for 2 whole hours. It may have been considered a comic book movie, but Joker was far from any other comic book movie ever made. In fact, the obvious influence of 1970s New York City films was apparent within the first few scenes. Instead of scale and spectacle, this film focused solely on the struggle of a depressed and mentally ill man in a dirty, corrupt, and crime-riddled city. What Todd Phillips and company were able to pull off took some serious balls. He swung for the fences and definitely delivered, breaking $1 billion in the worldwide box office and being the first rated R film to ever do so. Joker was a hit and became a worldwide phenomenon, but it did not come without any controversy.
But in the age of mass shootings, some film critics have raised concerns that Joker's disaffected lead character could become a hero to those already angry at society.
Some protested to the portrayal of such a character, viewing the film as sympathizing with the Joker. Why should the actions of a psychopathic madman killer be glorified? Some asked. There was concern that the Joker being portrayed as a normal everyday guy that had gone through some serious trauma and abuse would justify his violent lashing out. Critics viewed this as Phillips possibly justifying Arthur Fleck's reactions to how he had been wronged. Many believe the Joker was a pure villain. His portrayal should be black and white, not given any leniency or benefit of the doubt. But Phillips decided to do more with the character. He wasn't interested in an over-the-top, comic booky portrayal of the character that had been done over and over before. He wanted to show the Joker in a grounded way and really portray a compelling background on how someone could become like the Joker. He wasn't justifying the Joker's actions. He was trying to start a conversation on how we as a society could do a better job of preventing people like this from existing. He wanted to show how there are larger factors in play that lead someone to the brink of insanity, and how this process is not as black and white as it may be portrayed in comic books. Todd Phillips also had the guts to portray larger issues that we face in our own lives in Joker's Gotham. Growing inequality between the rich and the poor, shown in Gotham, in many ways reflects the inequality in our world that's only grown since the film's release. It is a central theme in the film that leads to growing dissent and unrest within the citizens of Gotham. Also, government mismanagement being another theme. In the beginning of the film, we hear about the trash filling the streets of Gotham and rats on every street corner, further contributing to the rot and decay of the city. We come to find out that this is actually due to a garbage strike going on, something that actually did happen in New York City in the 1970s and 80s. This adds to the suffering of the people of Gotham at the hands of an incompetent and corrupt government. The same government that goes on to cut public services that many people in Gotham depended on.
The city has cut funding across the board. Social services is part of that. This is the last time we'll be meeting.
This leaves Arthur without his therapist or access to his medications. Phillips was not justifying violence from Arthur or any of the citizens of Gotham portrayed in the film. He was simply saying that if you neglect the public, if you push them down enough, you shouldn't be surprised whenever they push back. Needless to say, many others did not see it this way. Regardless of the controversy, Joker was a huge success for Warner Brothers and DC. Along with making a gazillion dollars, the film grew to have a greater cultural impact. Many praised the film for raising the conversation about the possible results of a system that seems to care less and less for marginalized people. It dared to show how small individual actions can push someone to utter violence. How a population of a discontented city can rise up and decide to burn everything around them to the ground to get back at the elites. Despite the backlash, the years following the film's release have become almost prophetic in its portrayal of these themes and how they reflect our own world. A man being lauded as a hero for killing what many see as members of a corrupt ruling class.
Put the system on trial!
The public increasingly becoming fed up with constant condescension from the elites towards their concerns and rising up.
A billionaire shouldn't be able to tell all the rest of us what to do.
Just as previous depictions of the Joker, many people seem to identify with this character. Some viewed the Joker as a natural and logical reaction to an increasingly crazy world. You could choose to accept your decaying conditions, or you could choose to laugh in the face of the rules, of the system, of the bureaucracy, and introduce a little chaos into the established order. This iteration of the Joker became now instantly recognizable. The film was quoted, clipped, and memed all over the internet. Todd Phillips' Joker had cemented its place in film history. To cap all this off, Joaquin Phoenix went on to follow in Heath Ledger's footsteps and win an Academy Award for his portrayal of the Joker. With the incredible success of the film, Todd Phillips and Warner Brothers immediately got to work on a sequel. Now, here's where they lost me. Joker didn't need a sequel. It was a perfectly self-contained story. It was an original story, and was never intended to be anything more. We know who the Joker is as a villain. We've seen it a million times. The film did something unique and showed us how the character got his origins. The film was a deep character study. It wasn't about Batman, or the Batcave, or Alfred, or Detective Gordon, or any of that stuff. It was an attempt to use the veneer of a well-known comic book character to tell a broader cautionary tale. And it worked. It should have ended right there. But film studios are greedy, and Warner Brothers was no different. There was no way they weren't going to find a way to capitalize on their biggest success in the comic book genre up to this point.
Call the police! Get what you fucking deserve!
So Todd Phillips got to work and decided to flip the script once again by making Joker 2 a musical?
You serious?
That's right. For the sequel to the dramatic, gritty tone of the first Joker movie, this one was to be a musical, set in Arkham Asylum. This definitely came as a shock to many fans. I was definitely disappointed by the news, being that I mostly hate musicals. It turned out that this idea for a musical came to Joaquin Phoenix in a dream, and it was rumored that Todd Phillips had always wanted to make a musical. So, after writing the success of the first movie, Phillips had carte blanche to do what he wanted in the sequel. Another X factor was the introduction of Harley Quinn, being played by Lady Gaga. This made the whole idea of a musical make a little more sense. If you're casting an actor who's a great musician, why not make it a musical? The Joker and Harley Quinn have never shied away from the flamboyant in the comic books, so maybe, just maybe, this thing could work. A script was written by Phillips and Scott Silver, and production got underway. Eventually, a press release came out giving it a fall 2024 release date. There was a lot of pressure and expectation riding on the Joker sequel. Fans have been waiting 5 long years to see how the story of Arthur Fleck would play out after the events of the first film. Even with the shock of the film being a musical, all contained within Arkham Asylum, many fans were intrigued to see the final result. And just like the verdict and fate of Arthur in this film, the popular consensus was immediately found to be that Joker Folie was a giant turd.
I would just say, stay tuned. The day of reckoning will come. The record will be straight.
Why not set the record straight now? I mean, what is it about the record that's not straight?
Stay tuned.
The film received negative reviews by both critics and viewers. Within the opening days, the narrative about the film had already been cemented. Many found it to be an absolute dumpster fire. Many said it was boring, the musical numbers sucked, and it didn't take any of what made the first film great into the sequel. And just like that, the film's destiny as a failure was cemented, along with its horrible box office performance, losing Warner Brothers millions. I plan to actually see it in theaters. That was until I got exposed to all the negative press about the film. Everywhere I looked, I only found hate for the film. I heard from people that saw the movie, and ones that didn't, how bad it was. Just like most mainstream narratives, Joker Folie's reputation as a horrible film was now the movie's defining characteristic. After seeing all the negative opinions on the movie, I decided not to see it in theaters, for fear that it would ruin how I viewed the first movie. After some time passed, the film came out on streaming. and I decided to watch it for myself to see if it was really as horrible as everyone said. And to my surprise, I didn't find it to be that bad of a film. In fact, I actually rather liked it. Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't as good as the first movie in my opinion, but it was still a good, competently made film. I was then filled with questions as the credits rolled. Had I just been psyoped into hating a film I was excited to see before I had even watched it? I had started to wonder where this narrative came from. Now, don't get me wrong, it was not a masterpiece or anything like that, but I found it to be an enjoyable movie worth watching. Definitely not as bad as the massive negative reviews were making it out to be. I mean, a 5.2 out of 10 on IMDb? 32% on Rotten Tomatoes? Either I was crazy or there was some massive disconnect here. Some were calling it the worst movie of the year. Some were calling it the worst comic book movie ever made. I mean, really? Are we gonna go there?
He was in the Amazon with my mom when she was researching spiders right before she died.
There was so much negative attention around the film that I was tricked into having a negative opinion on it myself without even having seen it. Then I saw a clip of one of the most knowledgeable filmmakers of all time, Quentin Tarantino, giving his opinion on the film.
I really, really liked it. Really a lot. Like tremendously. I really got caught up into it. I really liked the musical sequences.
After that, I knew I wasn't crazy. I'm not saying that Tarantino's opinions on movies are gospel, but the guy knows his stuff better than almost anyone out there. And he went on record to say that he really liked the film. This destroyed the Joker 2 is garbage narrative for me. One of my favorite filmmakers now had the same opinion on Joker 2 as I did. It was at this point I started to sense foul play around the almost universal hate on the film. I started to put my tinfoil hat on and develop a theory that I wasn't under some kind of delusion, that the film was truly not as bad as everyone was saying. I started to believe that the only logical scenario was that this narrative around the film was done on purpose, that Joker 2 had been intentionally sabotaged from the inside.
Oh no.
Now, I know, this sounds insane. Why on earth would a movie studio purposely destroy a film that they put hundreds of millions of dollars into? Well, there are a lot of factors at play, and I have a couple working theories. The first one is that Warner Brothers demanded the movie tank. Now here's the thing, movie studios are not one working hive mind. There are different factions within the studios, different opinions on how things should be ran. One CEO's plan that has been put into place can be scrapped and replaced by another CEO's plan. This happens in all industries, not just the film industry. Joker was made in an in-between period for the vision of DC. The previous roadmap was an extended cinematic universe based on the members of the Justice League, starting with the Man of Steel film. But unlike the MCU, the DCU could never really decide on a set vision for their extended universe. Zack Snyder was originally given the creative vision to direct the DCU's ensemble film, Justice League, as a response to the Marvel's The Avengers. But unfortunate circumstances led Snyder to have to leave the production and be replaced by, funny enough, the Avengers director, Joss Whedon. The film ended up being a disaster, and the DCU never really recovered.
What the hell is even that?
Eventually, Zack Snyder's cut of the film was released, giving audiences his vision of what the DCU should have looked like. But by then, it was too late and the MCU had already separated ahead of the DCU. DC faced some more issues with the whole Ezra Miller situation. It was clear that the studio needed to scrap their current plans and create a new vision. That's when it was announced in late 2023 that James Gunn, director of the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy, would be taking over as the CEO of DC Studios, to basically be the Kevin Feige of DC. It was decided that Gunn would head the new creative direction of DC and be in charge of creating a new cinematic universe. On top of that, there would be a new casting of Superman, Batman, and pretty much all the DCU characters. Now, this announcement happened right after the release of Joker and Matt Reeves' The Batman, both of which were widely successful for DC. But Gunn would go on to say that these films would be totally separate from his DC universe. So, although DC now finally had a new and exciting direction for the future, it left them with some issues on how to handle two of their most recent successes. The Joker 2 had already been greenlit and was in production before the Gunn announcement. This is where I believe that Warner Brothers and Gunn decided to bite the bullet and dispose of Todd Phillips' Joker. They knew that if Joker 2 became successful as the first film, or even went on to surpass it, that this would only cause more confusion from fans and further headaches for DC and Warner Brothers. So the call was made. Joker 2 must fail at all costs. This may have cost some money in the short term that they had already invested, but in the long term it would ensure that they wouldn't lose any more money and could truly start fresh on their cinematic universe under Gunn. It was a tough call, but the old girl had to be taken out back and put down once and for all. It was decided that a covert PR smear campaign would be waged against Joker 2, so the film could fail and its legacy could be put behind them as they were moving into their new phase of the DCU. Why do I think that? Well, after looking at all the negative press about the film, it seemed a little staged, a little too obvious, a little too forced for my taste. Take for example this clip of Phoenix and Lady Gaga at the film's premiere. I remember seeing this video all over the internet after the film was released. There were multiple camera angles of Phoenix and Gaga having a conversation shortly after watching the film. As you can see, Phoenix is trying to say something to Gaga, who in response seems a little upset and shocked by what he has told her. Later there were clips of lip readers transcribing their conversation. Phoenix is telling Gaga that the film was horrible, while Gaga responds in shock to his comments. Now, I know it may sound like kind of a stretch to claim that this whole thing was staged, but hear me out. This all looks a little too convenient for me. From the two perfect camera angles to the actors being totally obvious with their conversation, not even trying to hide their lips or be subtle, it all just seemed a little odd to me. I mean, if you're the two leads of a huge movie, even if you think the movie you just spent months of hard work on is trash, surely you would have enough self-awareness to not have this conversation at the damn premiere of the film, in front of all these people, with every camera in the room looking at you. This seems like something you would probably keep to yourself in this situation and say at a more private, appropriate moment. This all just screamed fake to me. Now, this is the first theory, and in my opinion the most likely. The second working theory is that Todd Phillips himself sabotaged the movie.
Around the world. There's plenty of anger right now. How can you have more?
You don't think it'll exacerbate the problem?
David, I mean, I know you're a sophisticated guy. The world is a mess. The world is as angry as it gets.
Now, I have a couple reasons to think this. For one, Phillips had already gotten all the benefits and success from the first film. He was nominated for an Oscar and finally taken seriously as a dramatic filmmaker. He had made one of the most impactful movies of this century, and was now one of the most sought-after directors in Hollywood. He could basically choose anything he wanted for his next project. He could have chosen to move on. But I believe that he still had more to say about the character and was not at all happy about some of the ways the first movie had been interpreted. Phillips may have thought that despite the film's success, most audiences were not receiving the message of the movie how he intended. Despite his nuanced depiction of Arthur Fleck's transformation into the Joker, he was still always supposed to be seen as a bad guy. The film was a cautionary tale on why you don't idolize people that perform acts of violence, even if it aims to support your political and ideological beliefs. Phillips created his Joker not as a symbol to rally around, but about the dangers of where a life of bitterness, anger, and resentment can lead to. Many viewers used Phillips' Joker as a symbol of their own movements, and this may have put a burden on Phillips' conscience. Perhaps it was then that Phillips decided he had to finish the story of Arthur Fleck, and rather than giving the audiences what they wanted this time, he was going to give them what he felt they needed. Now, let me explain. What most people liked about Joker was not Arthur Fleck, but Joker. Sure, they empathized with Arthur, they felt sorry for Arthur, but although they may have felt that they shared the same pain as Arthur, he was not the hero of the story. Joker was the hero of the story. The first movie could be interpreted as a hero's journey of a weak and broken man finally standing up for himself against those who have wronged him and finally having agency in his own life. Arthur's transformation into Joker was him self-actualizing into his ideal self, into the guy that he always wished he could be. It took acts of violence for him to finally feel any sense of power in his life. In fact, this whole narrative has a lot in common with another movie that was very popular at its time, among young men particularly, Fight Club. In Fight Club, the main character befriends a man named Tyler Durden, who is everything the main character is not, but what he aspires to be. It is later revealed that Durden was just a figment of the main character's imagination, and all of Durden's acts in the film were done by the main character. Joker also wrestles with this same idea of self-actualization. See, these ideas are based on psychologist Carl Jung's idea of the shadow self, that there is a part of us that we hide deep beneath ourselves. Every day we have to put on a facade in order to act within society's norms. The shadow self is all the ways that maybe you want to act, but you know would not be socially acceptable. But this part of you may also be some of the most powerful parts. In our postmodern society, there are very few acceptable ways for men in particular to channel this side of themselves in a healthy manner. Before there was constant war and constant conquest that these impulses could be let out through. Thankfully now we live in a world that is much more peaceful, and the need for the darker parts of our nature are not needed. But what films like Joker and Fight Club attempt to discuss is how unhealthy it is that our modern society has so few outlets to let us express these powerful but sometimes rather darker sides within ourselves. Joker shows how Arthur finally feels seen for the first time after using his shadow self to take control. In the first film, when Arthur was being beaten by 3 guys on the subway, deep down every audience member watching the theater wanted him to blow their heads off. They would never say this out loud, they would say it would be wrong to act this way, but there was a sort of cathartic reaction to seeing Arthur finally lash out. Now, having all of this said, Phillips chose to tell this story so that it would become a tale of how not to use the shadow self. That it is bad to keep that part of you pent up, trying to mask it, because it will inevitably blow up in a way that is not good for yourself or those around you. There are healthier ways to combat this that I think our modern world is getting a little bit better at, such as emphasizing exercise or sports. Unfortunately, many did not get this message. So Phillips decided that he had to destroy the character that many loved for all the wrong reasons. He had to show that despite all of the wrong that had been done to Arthur, his response was not justified, that the Joker persona was just that, a persona, a mask that Arthur must put on to protect that hurt child within himself. Joker 2 goes into this theme. Everyone around him, from Harley to the prison guards to the crowds at the courthouse, none of them want Arthur Fleck. They want Joker. People take solace in someone that does all the bad things that deep down they wish they had the boldness to do. They don't necessarily want to be the Joker, but they like watching the train wreck unfold around him. And as we see in the film, this unfortunately provokes Arthur into bringing the Joker back out and leads to more and more self-sabotage. By the end of the film, Arthur finally comes to terms with this. He realizes that the Joker persona that he created hasn't fixed his life. Instead, it has destroyed it. Arthur finally takes off the mask of the Joker and comes to terms with himself and his actions. This in turn leads to Harley and his fans turning their back on him in disappointment. In the end, Arthur stops putting on a performance as the Joker after he realizes that that's all that Harley ever wanted from him, but they just fantasized about it. Joker actually did it, and it led to deadly consequences. Tarantino again puts it best.
Is that Todd Phillips is the Joker. The Joker directed the movie. The entire concept, even him spending the studio's money, he's spending it like the Joker would spend it, all right? And then his big surprise gift, the Jack in the Box, that when he offers you his hand for a handshake and you get a buzzer with 10,000 volts shooting you, is the comic book geeks. He's telling fuck you to all of them. He's saying fuck you to the movie audience. He's saying fuck you to Hollywood. He's saying fuck you to everybody who owns any stock at DC and Warner Brothers. This is under the Clive Barker rules of subversion at a massive level.
That hits the nail on the head. The Joker puts on a show, but gets satisfaction on never truly giving the people what they want. And maybe that was Phillips's intention with the film. He knew audiences wanted to see him double down on the Joker persona created in the first film. They wanted to see Phillips take the chaos even further. They wanted an even bigger, even crazier Joker in this film. But instead, Phillips gave them a slower, introspective look at a man coming to terms with the dark parts of himself. In the end, we find out that Arthur was never really Joker. and would never become the Joker, but instead would go on to inspire the man who ends up killing him. This moment ended up being the final perfect note in the musical of the cautionary tale of the rise and fall of Arthur Fleck. Todd Phillips isn't dumb. He knew that this would piss off many of the fans of the first film. So instead, he decided to lean into this reaction. Why do I think this? Well, let me put my tinfoil hat back on for a second. I believe Todd Phillips planted his own covert agent within the film to help him finish his final joke on the audience. Todd Phillips is obviously a big fan of comedy, and especially stand-up comedians. He's always casted them in his movies, notably Brian Callen. Tim Dillon is one of the biggest stand-up comedians out right now, with a huge podcast of his own. I think Phillips thought, hey, you know what would be hilarious? Instead of waiting for the audience to inevitably shit on the film, how about we beat them to the punchline and shit on it first? I think that Phillips put Dillon in one scene of the movie so that he could go on his and other podcasts and talk about how it was the worst movie ever made.
I'm grateful to have sat in a trailer for 3 months and been a small part of probably the worst film ever made.
You're probably thinking that this is kind of a weird way to make a joke about your own movie. But you know what Todd Phillips would say to that? So there you have it. These have been the rantings of a madman about 2 movies starring a comic book clown and how the second one was sabotaged from within. If you made it this far, you should probably be locked up in the loony bin with me, but I do appreciate your support. Please drop a like and subscribe if you haven't. Let me know in the comments what you thought about Joker 2. Was it really as bad as the critics said? Or do you believe my theory that it was sabotaged on purpose? Catch you next time.
This fine old world, it keeps